Inner class, otherwise known as your nested class, is nothing but when we define a class within another class. So far, we have seen the classes that we have taken, maybe one class, maybe two classes, or more than two classes we have taken in a program. We usually keep them outside of each of the class. I mean, individually, we define the classes along with their required methods. But if at all we try to put a class definition along with its methods and all inside another class, then that class is nothing but known as your inner class. So what is the benefit of inner class is we can logically group the classes that are used only one place, and as a result of which we can improve the code organization, and of course we can increase the readability of the program. Now let's see the syntax. Like we started with class followed by outer class, because now there will be minimum two classes. One is inside, one is outside. So the outside class we have treated as outer class, and inside this outer class we have defined an inner class along with the body of it, or I mean the respective methods and constructors or destructors, whatever. Now once we define an inner class, so how can we create the object of inner class? So earlier when we created object of a class, we just taken object name equal to the class name, right? But now the inner class is not available independently, rather it is be part of a particular class. So now there are two different ways to define the object of inner class. First one, suppose you have defined the outer class as well as inner class. Now you have come out of the outer class. There I want to define the inner class object. So that I can do simple like inner class object equal to, I will start with outer class object. Means before I start creating the object of inner class, I must create an object of the outer class. Using that object, I can write down outer class object dot inner class name. Okay. So earlier when we created the objects, we simply written like object equal to class name. But now we are doing the same thing, but only thing we have added here is this outer class object. So inner class object we have left hand side, inner class name we have right hand side, but this inner class name must be preceded with the object of outer class. Now this syntax you will follow if at all you are trying to define the object of inner class outside of the outer class. I mean after you define completely the outer class, inner class, all, then at the end of the outer class you can follow this guideline. Now another method is, suppose within the constructor of the outer class. So while defining the inner class inside the outer class, I may go on using the object, the constructor of outer class. So within the constructor of outer class also, I can create the object of the inner class which is present within it. Now how do we do that? We will take the help of this self followed by the inner class object equal to, once again I'll write self, then inner class name. So here this self is nothing but will be referring to the object of the outer class. I mean whenever I create the object of outer class, that will obviously invoke the constructor of the outer class, and within the outer class constructor I will be writing this syntax so that I can create the object of the inner class. Now let's deep dive into an example to have an understanding. So here I have taken a class called student, and this student is definitely an outer class, because you can see somewhere here we are trying to define one more class with the name laptop, and this class is not independently written, rather it is kept within this particular student class. Now this student class has one parameterized constructor, and here actually I'm using the second method where I'm trying to define the object of inner class within the constructor of the outer class. So like we have said, the syntax is like self dot, this is the inner class object name, equal to self dot the inner class name. Okay, so this is the constructor within which we are trying to create the object of this inner class, right? Now, this is of course a simple instance method of this student class where I'm just trying to print the values of name and role that I have set here. Whenever the object of this student class is created, obviously this constructor will be called, and these two lines are going to initialize the values of name and role, and also they are going to create, or it is going to create the object of the inner class, that is your laptop. Now, while defining the inner class, we have taken a constructor here. It is a non-parameterized constructor where we have initialized two instance variables. Let's say some brand set with some Dell and some RAM we have set with 8. Now, this class laptop is also having one method. Say this is show method where I'm just trying to print the brand that we have set here as well as the RAM size that we have fixed here. So now this is where your outer class definition completely ends. So this entire laptop class along with the constructor and this show method is actually part of this student class. Hence I can say the laptop is the inner class and your student is the outer class. So now I'm going to create the object of this outer class, because this constructor will be called only when I create the object of the outer class. And here, as I have used this line to create the object of inner class, so in order to execute these three lines, I must create the object of student class with the required number of parameters. So what we have done here, we created an object S1, which is nothing but object of the outer class, that is student. As expected, two parameters here, we have passed those two values, one for name, second one for role. In the due course of assigning this name to this instance variable and role to this instance variable, it is also going to execute this line which will create the object of laptop class. So like we know, when object of a class is created, it will invoke the constructor. So now this line will give the, take the control to this constructor. So where in this constructor, what we have done, we have set the brand to Dell and the RAM to 8. Now, once I come back, once this line is done, so it has done two jobs. Okay, first of all, what it has done, it has called the constructor of the student class, and within which we also created the object of the inner class laptop. Now this line is also invoking internally the constructor of the inner class, that is laptop. Now once the inner class constructor is called, now this entire constructor call is over. So now my control comes back to this line where we are invoking the show method of the outer class. So now when I reach the show method of the outer class, where I am printing the value of the name which I have set here and printing the value of the role. Okay, there's a spell mistake, like should be a self dot role, and this particular line is calling the show method of which class? The inner class. See, inner class name dot method name, and it is preceded with the self, where self is representing the object of the outer class. So now this line will take the control to the show method of the inner class laptop, which is going to print the laptop brand that is set here Dell and the RAM specification, which is your 8GB. So when I'm executing this program, I'm expected to get like the name is Sunita because of this line, and roll number is 102 because of this line, and this show method is going to print the value like laptop is Dell and the RAM is 8GB. Now let's run this program with the same content that we have shown you earlier. So we are getting like name is Sunita, laptop is Dell, and the RAM is 8 GB.